A lot of questions popped up in my previous high rep, high frequency training video. As someone who has been practicing this training method for over a year now with great results, I'll be answering these questions over the next few videos based on the many lessons I've had to learn through trial and error. Some of the benefits of high rep, high frequency training are that it lowers perceived time investment in your workouts, it reduces fatigue and recovery time, and when combined with a focus on form and technique, it reduces the risk of injury. One of the questions that popped up was, how do I go about structuring a full week of high rep, high frequency training? It's important to note that I came to this answer through trial and error, not by being rigid with my approach to training. So, as much as you are more than welcome to copy my training protocols exactly, it will always be more beneficial to cater your workouts to your individual constraints, goals, and ability levels. Not being dogmatic in your approach is something that I hear K.Boges talk about a lot. Anyone can make this method work for them, calisthenics athletes and gym goers alike. When structuring a week of training, it's important to consider exercise selection, ability level, and of course your individual goals. Exercise selection should be catered to all three of these. Keep in mind, if you're an absolute beginner, you probably won't be able to match me rep for rep to begin with. So adjust accordingly to an appropriate difficulty level where the rep range is within close proximity to failure with the exercises you have selected. If you're more advanced than me, then crank up the difficulty level using higher rep ranges, additional weight, or even harder progressions. Also note that when following the high frequency approach, typical volume of each training session will be lower. Don't expect to just double your training frequency without reducing training volume accordingly, as this will increase the risk of injury, overtraining, or burning out, essentially having the opposite effect of what we are trying to achieve with the high rep, high frequency training approach. My exercise selection is one leg movement, one chest movement, one back movement, and one accessory movement of my choice. Generally, I'll do some core work as this transfers nicely over to the sports that I do. But sometimes I'll work progressions and throw in a few sets of low rep dragon squats or muscle ups, for example. I keep my exercise selection relatively consistent, as this makes progress measurable and easy to track. At this point, I've also completely lost my initial fear of this method causing an overuse or repetitive strain injury, as I've been training this way for over a year, injury-free, and never felt better. I'm currently doing pistol squats for legs, deficit push-ups for chest, and explosive pull-ups for my back, as this adheres nicely to my current ability levels, making it an appropriate challenge, and also facilitates my goal of working toward harder variations of these movements. I do 3 sets of each within close proximity to failure each set, and when the rep range gets out of that sweet spot for hypertrophy, being between 5 and 35 reps, I'll choose a harder progression of that movement. At this point, if you're a beginner, you might be thinking, I can't do any of those movements you've just listed, and isn't this style of training only meant to incorporate the fundamental calisthenic movements such as pull-ups, push-ups, and bodyweight squats? To answer the first question, you'll need to adapt the difficulty level of each movement to your own individual ability level using regressions. For example, before I was able to do pistol squats, I was using regular bodyweight squats instead and worked my way toward the harder progression. Before I could do pull-ups, I was doing bodyweight rows and Australian pull-ups instead. When deficit push-ups were too difficult for me, I was doing regular push-ups until they no longer provided an adequate challenge, even in the higher rep ranges. If the volume of the structure I just provided is too high, then reduce it until it is appropriately challenging, but not so challenging that you can't recover in time for your next workout. Even after 10 years, my training is and always will be constantly adapting and evolving as I progress and my goals change. To answer the second question, high rep, high frequency training is not restricted to the fundamental calisthenic movements. You can apply this training method to gym-based workouts as well by simply upping the frequency and lowering the volume of training. The focus on form and fundamentals that K.Boges often mentions isn't part and parcel to this training method. Rather, it's an injury prevention protocol that is extremely important to follow when training high frequency with the same movement patterns each session. Through making form the primary focus of our trainings, we mitigate the risk of putting unnecessary strain on our joints and ligaments, making this training protocol extremely sustainable over the long term. As we age, we'll naturally begin to approach training differently and start to look at it through the lens of longevity and sustainability, so that ultimately we can aim to make it a lifelong practice. This is why I opted to take K.Boges' wisdom and apply it to my own trainings. He's someone who's older, more experienced, and has maintained great physical shape long term. All things that I am striving for as well. I compare this to a lot of people I see my own age who are clearly burning the candle at both ends and not showing the reality of the strain this puts on your body over the long term. There are many examples of this happening in the bodybuilding community, of athletes tragically dropping dead far too young, or suffering from life-altering wear and tear injuries, in Ronnie Coleman's case and many others. So, whether I choose to use weights or not, I've chosen to take the wisdom from Kyle's training experience and apply it to my own practices, with form being the primary focus, moving each day being the secondary focus, and of course progressive overload being third on the tier list of priorities. I hope this video helps clear up some concerns around your own training, and I really appreciate all the thoughtful questions on the previous video. Of course, if you have any more, feel free to drop them in the comments section down below. Cheers.